Good morning all. A very warm welcome to the fifth day of the refresher course on our scientific program. Today's first session is on the topic related to budget preparation. For that, I would like to welcome our respected speaker, Dr. S.M. Habibur Rahman. Dr. S.M. Habibur Rahman is the professor and in charge of research activities, Department of Pharmaceutics, PhD College of Pharmacy. He had completed his diploma and B.Pharm from JSS College of Pharmacy, Ooty, and M.Pharm in Pharmaceutics from Sri Ramakrishna Institute of Paramedical Sciences, Coimbatore, and was awarded with PhD from JNTU, Hyderabad. He has 33 Scopus indexed publications in his credit. He has guided 3 PhDs and 21 M.Pharms and has a 15 years of experience in teaching. He has received various grants from USAI University, Malaysia, AICTE New Delhi, DST, Vitiligo Research Foundation, USA, TNS CST for his research works. He has been awarded with India Prime Top 100 Professors and Teachers Award in 2021, Academic Excellence Award in 2020 by Institute of Scholars in November 2020, Asian Youth Innovation Award, Gold Award Youth Gold in Healthcare, Professional Care Technology, Biotechnology and Life Sciences at Malaysia in 2020. Before now, I agreed to invite Dr. S.M. Habibur Rahman sir for the session on budget preparation and UCSE submission. Welcome sir, and over to you.
A very warm good morning to all the participants of the refresher course. It's nice to be here in this platform to share some of the topics related to budget preparation in the research grant applications. So I thank Mrs. Anadiba Madam for the very nice introduction. And I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share the thoughts on the budget preparation in availing the research grants. So I hope the slides are visible to all the participants. So last few days, you would have been heard many things about how to write and research proposal and how we are going to going to write the research and how to set up the research areas. So my topic will be focused on how we are going to prepare the budget for your research grant applications. So let's start by stating that why the health research. Just sorry for the disturbance. The slides are not visible. So before starting getting to my topic of budget preparation, just few slides about why the health research is important and why it should be funded. So we all know that already you would have been heard many things about why health research is important and why it should be funded in the last few days. So the policy of any government, how to come out with some kind of funding solutions which can impact on the human health and which can improve the public health care. Obviously, it will improve the quality of human life. So once the quality of the human life has been improved by funding healthcare research, the social and economic development of the nations can be built by the humans whose life has been improved by the grant. So this is the how much total GDP of any country spending on research. Generally, Indian, we are spending around 0.7% of our total GDP in the research grants, while compared to the other countries, something like China, Japan, or USA, Israel, Korea, and all, we are a bit low. So this is the map which is showing the different parts of the world, how they are putting their GDP in improving the research grants so that they can improve the different capacity building for their country and the social and economic development of the country. If you look at the this light shade, blue color, gray color, around 2 to 4.9%. So the Canada, Japan, and Korea, Israel, and all is spending more on their research while compared to the other countries. We are falling one of the lowest country where. So why I am putting this slide is we are hugely, number of population is huge, and the funding from the GDP to the research grants is very low, 0.7%. So there is a huge competition. So where we can crack and to get the funding is lies in preparing the budget in a very clear manner. I have given some of the visualization sources where you can look at the data more microscopically. So grant winning application, what are the two important key elements? So you need an innovative research problem with the best possible solution or idea of how we are going to tackle that particular research problem. That is one key element in grant writing application. And the second important point is appropriate planning of budget. So without appropriate planning of budget, you cannot get the research grant. So we have to understand what is budget so that we can come out with the appropriate planning of budget for your proposal. So a budget is a quantitative expression of financial plan for your future expenses on the particular project you have designed in each period of a time. So it has to be item wise, it has to be year wise, it has to be specific to the hypothesis or objective which you're trying to fulfill through your that particular item, what you're trying to procure and how it will be utilized for the project purpose. So there is a different heads. Broadly, we can say that recurring, then non-recurring, then institutional overheads. So these are three broad categories of the budget, recurring, non-recurring. So one by one, we will get into details of this. So broadly, we can say that there is a direct cost and indirect cost is involved in any research project budget. So when you're looking at the direct cost, these are the four categories which has been subclassed under the direct classes: personal, then recurring expenses, non-recurring expenses, and traveling expenses. So these four main subheadings are falling under the direct cost, then indirect cost. So again, when we are classifying the research project budget, different funding agencies will have their own way of asking for the budget, like personal, how it has to be done, how much they can allot for that particular head. So like this, every different funding agencies will be having a different kind of a set of criteria and guidelines for their budget allocation to that particular research grant. So before getting into that, you have to understand the funding application, you have to know the clarity of criteria and what kind of guidelines they have given for writing a budget. So basically the direct and indirect cost will be institutional overheads. So let's see what are the direct cost. Personal means what are the salaries with advances. So how much salaries you're going to provide for the resource person or human personnel whom you're going to get it to execute that particular project can be budgeted. It's like human resources like site manager. If you're doing some kind of a So if you're doing some kind of a clinical research and we are going for a multidisciplinary or multi-location, multi-centric studies, then you need a site manager who can look after the different sites. The site manager you can recruit, or research assistant, then junior research fellow or senior research fellow, research associate, data entry operator and attender, whomever involved as a personal in that particular project and how they are going to help in executing the different timelines of the project. So that all can be budgeted under the heading of a personal. Then in direct cost, if we are looking at most of the Indian funding agencies, they are not having any provisions for salaries for the principal investigator or co-principal investigators. So that you have to keep it in mind. Then some few supporting systems like Ministry of Oils and Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, they provide a one-time minimal fees for investigators and supporting staff. Then Welcome Trust and DBT Alliance project is giving some kind of a provisions for getting a salary for the investigators. So these are the direct cost under the personal category. So then this is the important head where the most of the chemicals and consumables, what you're going to use it for the projects will be fall under, which is a recurring expenses. So recurring is nothing but these are the expenses which are variable. It varies different time. First year it will be varying, second year it will be varying, third year it will be varying, and it will keep on occurring in different timeline of the project. So these are the variable and which keep on occurring throughout the entire project duration. All these kind of recurring expenses can be budgeted under this head. Like for example, if you take consumables, chemicals, glasswares, laboratory testing charges, we are giving your samples to analyze from some other higher laboratory to get that particular test done, that can be included in the recurring expense. Then if you are using some diagnostic kits, then all the stationery, prints, photocopies, communication, if you are communicating your postages, then telephone charges, if you're making any interaction with your PA and other research members, then what are the survey tools, if you are using any kind of questionnaires, then publication charges, like once your results are out that you need to be published, that article processing charges can be included in the recurring expenses, reprints, binding, like this. You try to include all sorts of expenses what you're using in that particular project can be kept under the recurring expenses. Then if you're doing some kind of bioavailability studies or clinical trials, then you can go for allowances for patients who are participating in that particular study. Then you can avail the food charges and the physician fees. These all can be included in the recurring expenses. So the next is the non-recurring expenses. Generally, most of the budget will be going into this head because this is a one-time in nature, which will not occur at regular intervals. So that is called non-recurring expenses. So the major equipments and instruments with it, accessories, which you are going to use it for the project particular study, then softwares if you are getting anything, then computer, printers, then electronic and electronic items and accessories for the existing instruments in the PA lab. So all these things can be kept in non-recurring. So the percentage of budget allocated for this particular head to procure various equipments or instruments among the funding agencies varies from 25% to 90%. So this is where you have to be very clear in stating what is the need of that particular instrument for fulfilling or executing that research proposal, and how that particular instrument will be a capacity building for that particular institute, then how it can expand the research eco-culture around that particular region. So these sort of things you have to keep it in mind in choosing those major equipments which is going to fulfill the need of achieving the objective of your research proposal. And it can be between 25% up to 90% can be the entire budget will be filled by the non-recurring expenses. Then some of the agencies do not have provisions for the equipment and budget. So generally, if you're going for a state-wise funding and all, they will not be having any provisions for providing equipments, because the budget will be very less amount, like 50,000, 1 lakh. If you're going, you cannot procure any kind of equipment. So those kind of agencies will not be having any provision to have a non-recurring expenses. Then some agencies, they will purely put maximum of their up to 90% of the budget to this non-recurring expenses in the vision of development and infrastructure of that particular laboratory, so that the particular area or the particular region can be uplifted as a capacity building from the government policy wise. So like this, you have to understand what is the agency you are looking at. Then what is the way you are going to plan your non-recurring expenses, and how you are going to justify that particular non-recurring expenses. It varies between 25 to 90%. So approximately make sure that it falls within the line. So in my understanding, the overall budget is 10 lakh. You can put around 4 lakhs. That is 40% of your overall budget can be kept for the non-recurring, which will be most feasible in justifying your narration of the budgeting principles. So then comes the traveling expenses. This is one more direct cost, where you will be attending your research meetings with your co-PAs, or going for conferences, workshops, or we are sending your research assistant or the personnel whom you have recruited for getting trained for some kind of instruments. And most of the most of the foreign travel is not allowed or there is no provision by any funding Indian funding agencies providing foreign travel, because they have all the Indian funding agencies, they have a different funding proposals for getting the travel grants. So they are not including that in your project proposal. So don't put any foreign travel in your Indian funding applications. Then travel expenses to collect the data, or going to the survey center, or going to the visit other centers in multi-centric study can be budgeted in Texas. So these are the traveling expenses. Then comes the indirect cost. So as I mentioned in my previous slides, it is institutional overheads. So which is considered as an indirect cost, which is not directly used to be utilized in any step of the study or any step of the project execution. But to run a project, you need a laboratory, you need the basic facilities which will be provided by your institute. So those costs will be included as an indirect cost. So these are the costs which cannot be directly attributed to the specific expenses of a project, but it requires to run a project. So in terms of the overhead charges, so like you need a laboratory maintenance, you need electricity for that particular laboratory, water facilities, then library and other facilities provided by the institution to run a proposed research projects. So this in the total budget value, around 5 to 15% can be fixed as an indirect cost or overhead charges provisioned as institutional overhead charges, which goes directly into the institution. So the range of overhead, again, it is flexible based on the type of funding agencies what we are providing. In some cases, there will be institution, the funding will be giving the full set of money for developing from the building. Like if you're going for a European Union project or WHO projects, or from starting from constructing the building for that particular center, then maintaining that, all this cost also will be given through this. But Indian agencies, they are not giving. That is considered as a overhead charges for the institution. So if you look at a sample budget for summary, it has to be year wise. So on an average basis, most of the projects has been planned for 3 years from DST, DBT, like all the different agencies, they will be expecting around 2 years project or 3 years project. So items, you can keep a salary for your research fellow, then equipments, books, these all the direct cost. Other non-recurring expenditures you can put, then recurring expenditure, then PA and travel allowance and DNS allowance. Then what is the institutional supporting for your project? Then fee of PA and OPA if that particular agency is providing any provisions for including that cost. Then miscellaneous expenses, there is some kind of a special needs will occur during any project execution stages, so that miscellaneous expenses can be kept. So again, this first year, second year, third year, and balance of the 10% of the total amount can be kept as a institutional overheads or contingency. So this is a sample budget summary, how you can prepare year wise. I have not given any different tabular columns which is mentioning how the DBT requires, or how DBT or DST or ICMR requires in different heads. So now most of our Indian funding agencies has been, the application has been made online. So you may not be having much difficulty in filling the heads and calculating. So otherwise, if you're putting as a hard copy, so there will be some kind of calculation issues where the first year, second year, third year addition will not be as a total. There will be some kind of errors. But now most of the application has been made online portal. So the automatic calculation has been done. It will show while you're filling it in. So there are various funding agencies which is promoting the health research in different thirst areas. So these are some of the examples I have given here, Indian funding agencies with its websites. So how are you? So this is the step where you have to give a clear-cut justification for your budget. Simply, you cannot put something on the budget and okay, I need some instrument, will get this, which is not much utilized in your project. So then it will not be allowed. So that is the points how you are going to rationalize or validate your budget. What you have kept in your project proposal is very, very important. So basically, it should narrate the clear explanation for each item in the budget. So every item, if we are mentioning around 20 items, each item has to be in line with the proposed research proposal, and it should not deviate from that. So that is one important point. Then item wise and year wise breakup must be provided. So you have to give an item wise with the year wise. All the breakups must be provided. Then quantification of the total cost of each line item and document cost calculation should be done. So how we are doing? So if you are putting the chemicals for first year or consumables for first year, so all the things has to be in relevance with what kind of a study you are going to execute. Then how we are going to document that particular cost calculation. So the justification should follow the same order as that as itemized budget. So if you're mentioning the itemized budget, so try to make sure that what is the way your project is getting executed. So in the first year, if you are procuring the instrumentation, then the non-recurring items should be in the first year. It should not be in the third year. So that the mismatch should not be there. So the justification will be clear so that you follow the same order as that itemized budget. So these are the four important points you can keep it in mind while you are giving the validation or justification or rationalization for your budget. So how we can plan a very simple research budget means clearly you try to go through the funding agency document, what is their criteria, what for what are the items or headings they are giving the money or not giving the money. So understanding that agency and their thirst area and their criteria for budgeting has to be kept in mind. So expectation of the funding agencies. Then you look at the universities and institutes, what is their need and your research team. So it has to be a holistic view in preparing a research budget. That is one important point. Then basically the proposed budget will not be will not be reviewed by only scientific experts. So there will be a financial experts who will be there also in the review panel. So your proposed budget should be prepared in such a way that it can easily understood by even non-scientific expert like financial experts. So what I'm trying to mean by this point is your budget should be convincing, like how we plan for any small work execution also we are planning. So it should be convincing to the funding agencies and the review panel members whom they are having a non-scientific experts along with the scientific experts. Both has to be convinced by your budget. That is important. Then too high budget and too low budget. Don't think that if you are putting, okay, I am putting only 5 lakhs, 6 lakhs so that I can easily avail the research grant. It is not the way how it works. The same way, you don't put too much of high budget. You need a equipment which is around of 30 lakhs or 40 lakhs. Okay, we will try to get the instrument. For that, we will write this proposal. That is also not the way how you can get it. So too low or too high budget will make the review panel as a suspicion, and chances of receiving a grant will be very, very less. So these are the basic points what you can keep it in mind while you are planning a very simple research budget. You understand your funding agency and their thirst area of research where they want to fund. Then what is the way you are going to execute your project, and what is their criteria and guidelines they have given for the budgeting. So don't mismatch. If it is around 25% of the total project value will be given for non-recurring head, don't put 30%. So try to be between 20 to 25%. So like this, you have to clearly first understand what is the criteria of their financial budgeting guidelines. Then you can prepare your budget, which is going to be fulfilling your need of that particular research. So these are the points what I want to make while you are preparing budget. And with some thoughts, so generally we say that these are the comic pictures which we used to say. So we think that the review panel members sitting there and saying, oh, it's R&D, it's research and development. They thought that just they have a budget of 5 crore to be distributed, so to rip off and distribute to the 15 members who has come for the presentation. It is the way how we think that funding agencies work. Or sometimes we say that there is we do things in a little different around here, so we'll make it as a development and research. So like this kind of basic mindset and idea what we have as researchers, and what we make idea about the funding bodies. So there is a lot of things. We are spending around 0.7% of GDP to the research grant applications, and there is a huge number of population is there in India, and a heavily competitive structure. So the way you are preparing your proposal and the way you are preparing the budget is very key in achieving your research goals. So with this thought, I like to finish my presentation. And one more information what I want to share is in India there is only 156 researchers are getting funded in 10 million. So per 10 million, only 156 researchers, which is very, very low in number. That is because of the less number of funding application has been sent with the proper research plan and proper budgeting. So I'll compare to the Japan, US, China and all. They are having around 4,000 to 6,000 researchers per million population. But India, we are having a habitat of only 156 people per million as a researcher. So this is one side we have to make sure that we have to be more energized to get more funding from different agencies. So with this, I like to finish my presentation. And if you have any questions, I'll be willing to answer. Okay, I think if there is no more questions on this sessions, I'll try to give it to the organizers to carry it further. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable information. Your explanation on classifications of budget and different funding applications from different funding agents, whereas the expenses, how they should be classified, whereas it can be recovered or not, or ordinary expenses, whereas the itemized budgeting, everything would have been very much useful for our upcoming research scholars who are now going to apply for funding agents. Whereas I think it is highly informative and they will come up with all funding. As you said, it will not be lower and the numbers will be increasing. So thank you for your valuable information and sharing your experience, sir. And now, as a continuation of our budgeting and UCSC submission, we have the next speaker, Mr. T. Palaniswamy. Where Mr. T. Palaniswamy is a senior officer in internal audit at PSG institutions. He had been working at PSG as a senior executive in internal audit for more than 15 years. And he had been worked as a senior manager, finance and accounts, especially in cargo and construction industries from 2006 to 2019 and other industries. He came back to PSG from 2020. So unless and otherwise we have an auditing experience or whoever shares the information will be free to find the documents exactly. So now I invite Mr. T. Palaniswamy for the session on budget preparation. Welcome, sir, and over to you.
Yeah, good morning to all participants. I'm here to explain that regarding utilization certificate of the government research funding utilized. So the name itself explains utilization. Utilization means once we completed the expenditure, what purpose which was allotted and how it was utilized, and as per their norms and their instruction, or we spent everything. So because I continue with my previous session, doctor explained clearly how to prepare the budget to submit the funding agencies like ASKE, Indian Society for Technical Education, All India Council for Technical Education, and so many government agencies are there to provide research funding to develop, to improve the educational and research areas. So it is easy to explain. The doctor explained everything on what basis the research fund is allotted. And I continue with that. The concerned agencies clearly spell out in their sanction letter that how this fund to be utilized and what hits it is to be incorporated. For example, first it will explain the what purpose this government grant is allotted to the institution and how it is to be spent, what the purpose, and what are the account hits like manpower, equipments, contingencies, travel, and so many hits are there. So as an internal auditor or generally auditors look, first they gone through the sanction letters and their communication letters, everything. In that we will understand what they say and also clearly they will do the certificate in which format it should be submitted and what are the other requirements and what are the bills requirements. Suppose they can explain that the government e-marketing agencies are there, GEM like that. So this research funds, how it is to be utilized, how it is to be spent. So these are all, the name itself explains utilization, how the allotted fund was utilized for the specific purpose. So as an internal auditors, we look with the relevant bills, vouchers, and everything, and we summarize those expenses under the respective heads already, which is explained in the sanction letter. So before submitting this certificate, this utilization certificate should be supported with statement of expenditure and other annexures as per their requirement. It is also given in their sanction letter, their memorandum of understanding. So what are the key documents available with us? So utilization certificate is simply as per their instruction and directives. Actually, we spent those funds. This is the utilization certificate. This certificate should be certified by a chartered accountant or institutional chief finance officer as per their directives. This is also. So sometimes they may instead to get the certificate from the practicing chartered accountant, or like central universities, they may say only that the group chief finance officer certificate is enough, along with the required reports of outcome of the research activities to be enclosed with this utilization certificate. See, mainly utilization certificate to be submitted that within the stipulated time, that stipulated time also to be given in the scheme document. For example, and also they will give the breakup, the fund, for example, they allotted 1 crore project funding. It is out of it 50 lakhs for the equipment purpose. I think already in my previous session, doctor explained what is the recurring and non-recurring. Non-recurring mostly in the capital nature, like equipment, the ones it is supports. Without that, we cannot engage. We cannot complete the specific project. And also other non-recurring cases like travel, purchase of some other needed items like printing and stationery and everything. So and institutional overheads. The institutional overheads is nothing but the concerned institution provide all other indirect support to execute these project activities or research activities. So for which they allotted some overhead amount to the concerned institutions. That also to be taken care in the utilization certificate. And also it should be submitted the periodical wise, the year wise, for example, 2021, 22, 22, 23. And see, I'll explain. And also they may instruct to keep the respective asset register against for which we utilize the funds from the research activity fund. So as per their instruction, we have to maintain the register, asset register, and other important books of accounts. And also we have to ensure that internal control for the safeguarding of the assets which is procured from the research funds, and other related issues and other related matters also to be taken care. See, generally this utilization certificate is governed by GFR. GFR is nothing but government funding rules. It comes under the Ministry of Finance. They given so many utilization forms like GFR 12A, B, C, and form number 1, 2, 3 like this. That is which form is applicable for your research funding. That form should be filled and submitted for the to the agencies which is allotted the fund. As an internal auditor and auditor, we have to check each and every bill supporting to the this utilization certificate. So, for example, suppose the sanction it is manpower cost and research activities and overhead expenses, and the purchase should be as per their internal controls, like because the quotations and its comparison and the final purchase order, how they allotted, and so many issues, so many steps are there to ensure the transaction happened very genuinely. So based on that, we submit the utilization certificate after getting the certification from the chartered accountant. So this is the basic thing. What is the utilization certificate? I think in previous session, doctor explained everything. It is the budget submission, in which area they needed the fund and how they are going to spend everything. So based on that, we looking that after the spend, budget is before. I think it's a proposal. The proposal is executing by spending so many activities. Those activities, those expenditure, we are submitting in a separate form that is called utilization certificate. I think I hope you understand what is the utilization certificate now. Is there any doubt? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Palisamy, sir. It was very useful. As an audit expert, you shared all your information, which we have to have in our documentation purpose for getting an utilization certificate after finishing a project. So thank you for your valuable information. It will be very much useful for the young scientists who are upcoming and doing projects, how they have to complete and get an utilization certificate so that auditing will be smooth. Thank you so much, sir. Dear participants, we request you to have a small break and rejoin at 11:15. Thank you.